Sabina, you've talked a lot about some of the challenging aspects to family mediation. I'm assuming there are some rewarding aspects to it. Could you say a bit more about those?
Of course there are. It's hugely rewarding work on every level, on a personal level, on the level of the clients, and on the level of society in general. When we're looking at outcomes, we look at the outcomes of certain processes, and the outcome of mediation will generally be something that is much more solid and much more lasting than a court order that is imposed by somebody who doesn't need the family, who doesn't know the family, apologies. So what you will have is an agreement that has been carefully considered, that has been tested, reality tested, and tested in terms of the needs of the individual family, and that will hopefully even have led to a new, slightly better understanding between the parties of where each of them is coming from, what their own needs are, and particularly what the needs of their children are. So mediated agreements around divorce and separation tend to last much better than those imposed by a court, where you often end up in what's known as the revolving door syndrome, where parties are so disempowered by that process that every time the family circumstances change, they're back into court again looking for an amendment or a new court order. Even where agreement isn't reached in mediation, studies and personal experience would show us that the outcomes tend to be better. So even where there are subsequent legal proceedings, often those are resolved by negotiation between the parties and their lawyers even before it ever gets to court. Or if it gets to a court, only some of the issues will need to be ruled on by a court because the parties have at least been able to negotiate some of them. So that is not always, but often the case. And very importantly, when you look at the broader system that I've been talking about, systems tend to have better outcomes because the mediator will be there to say, well, what about the grandparents? What about your stepbrother? What about your new partner who is now living in the house with the children? How is all of that going to work? Instead of a very binary solution that is imposed by the court by necessity, because its sphere of influence is smaller than mediation is. And very importantly for the children, and it really is all about the children because the children are the future, going to mediation and trying to, with the help of a third party, negotiate the terms of a new family relationship models successful dispute resolution for children. It teaches children that even when the worst happens, even when everything falls down around us, it doesn't mean we have to retreat behind our trenches and fight. It means that we can talk about things and we can work out something that's going to work for everybody in the future. And that as parents, we value what our children's input into this might be as well. So it really is modeling a new form of conflict management for children. And I know that former clients of mine whom I would still meet would say, thank God we went to mediation, and our children have thanked us for going to mediation because they have friends whose parents have been rolling around the courts for the last 2 years and it has been absolutely miserable. So, it's a hugely rewarding space and area to work in. And I would always tell clients, when they're at their most distressed and when it really seems like this is never going to end, that it does get better and it does get easier. And you see that because particularly when you live in a small town, you meet your former clients 2, 5, 7 years down the road and they are fine and they are better. And, when I can tell that to the clients I'm working with now, I know that I'm telling the truth and that it does get easier. So yeah, it's a hugely rewarding area to work in.